Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. Case file number 1247, written by Egoplasm. The 5-hour drive to nowhere. So I used to be in a punk rock band, and we used to drive out to our drummer's house to practice. Our drummer lived in this secluded old house that was placed way off the main road by several country roads and a long as hell gravel driveway that led back into a heavy wooded area. We had all met up, had a good practice, hung out, how all that stuff happens. After, I'd packed up my stuff and left. However, I was driving back down that long gravel driveway. I noticed it felt a lot longer than usual, and I was driving on it for a long while. I drove on a straight gravel road for about 5 hours if my car's clock could be trusted. I even stopped a few times along the way to get out and look around or to try to call my friends to see if someone could come find me. None of my calls went through apparently. The road stretched perfectly straight for hours and was flanked on both sides by empty cornfields. I couldn't see lights from local farmhouses or the nearby town that I lived in, which was weird because you could almost always see the light pollution from that town at night. Just perfect black on a road I didn't know. After a solid 5 hours of driving and feeling exhausted, I blinked and found myself sitting in my own home's driveway, car idling, and only 30 minutes had passed as it was only still about 1 a.m. To this day, I have no idea what happened, and I even still joke about it to my old bandmates that they should expect a phone call in the middle of the night from a much younger me. Case notes file 1247. The 5-hour drive to nowhere. Aliens might have been involved here. It has all the classics of an abduction. Late at night, isolated area, dark. If so, the memory fabrication was more pristine than most in this case, as you don't even recall seeing any bright lights or anything buzzing around in your car's electronics, which typically precedes an abduction. Their technology disrupts ours, the flow of electrons. For some reason, that isn't what I suspect though. It sounds more to me like a temporary dead buffered server, those we visit while in transit from quantum immortality to a new server. You're in a dead zone effectively, a server or world that is uninhabited. Nothing going on, and time there isn't relevant. You just get reset when you move to a new universe, the one where you're actually going to spend your time, the permanent location. In a sense, you were just in a base template until your soul finishes downloading into the new server. I can't discount aliens. I always wanted to be aliens, but I think in this case it's just a server transfer effect. I don't know what caused it, why you just died in the car, but people do die randomly all the time. You know, it's something you always have to remember. That does happen, sadly. Case file number 1248, written by Childrenofthenight. The Remarkable Journey of Hudson. One night, I dreamt 2 people were handing me a black dog. They said to me, "This is your dog, and your dog's name is Hudson." I held up my hands as if to ward them off and replied, "No, I already have a dog," which I did. 1 month later, there was a terrible wildfire which destroyed many homes. The day after the fire, a couple I knew, animal rights activists, showed up on my doorstep. They had a small young black dog with them. They didn't tell me her name. She had lost her home in the fire. They begged me to foster her for a few days, telling me they would soon find her a new home. I took one look at her and said, "No, that's okay, I'll keep her." I named her Hudson, and she was the most amazing dog ever, the best dog in the multiverse. All the dogs I have owned before or since could not compare to her. Super smart, super devoted. There was nothing she couldn't learn. I love that dog so very much. She has been gone for years now, but I think about her every single day. Case notes file 1248. The Remarkable Journey of Hudson. The best dog in the multiverse. I love that line. We owe it to pets we keep to make their lives as comfortable and fun as possible. It's the least we can do for their devotion, don't you think? This means lots of treats, and lots of walks. It's interesting how your dream did predict the future though, but not in every little detail of minutia. Those fragments of information the subconscious can grab onto that speak of the future don't always tell the whole story. You can grab certain fragments, maybe the big picture, but not all the details all the time. Most of the time I suspect it's no more discernible than as a strong emotion or gut feeling. And I think in those cases, mostly people ignore them or they don't believe they're true. I think over time, if you allow yourself to believe it and recognize those good emotions, and then you realize, yeah, this stuff is actually happening, you'll embrace it more. But I think people are afraid of that. And I get it, the idea of predicting the future or even like feeling the future is still somewhat disconcerting. I understand that. Bonus file written by EmeliusBrown, the Unsettling Californian Giant. I was 17 years old and lived in a very small rural community in central California. It was late spring 1996. My best friend and I were bored and decided to take a drive, something we did frequently. Bear in mind that where I lived, I was basically surrounded on one side by mountains and the other by over 80 miles of flat, sandy valley. Anyway, it was about 11 p.m., and we had been driving out towards the valley on a dirt road for about an hour. Descending down into the valley from the hills, I spot a glimmer of reddish-orange light. We, of course, drive another 20 minutes towards the glimmer and come upon it. Coals. The glimmer was embers or coals of a fire. Where we were, there was nothing, and I mean nothing. No bushes, no trees, no hills, nothing. Not for at least 10 miles in either direction. Flat. We shined a handheld spotlight all around and didn't see anybody or anything. We decided the proper thing to do was turn the truck around and throw dirt on the embers by spinning the truck tires. As my friend backed up the truck, I looked out and rolled down my window, and not 5 feet from me was the largest man I've ever seen. Black, shirtless, bald, wearing only denim shorts, at least 6'5", 300 pounds, and staring right at me. I yelled, "Drive, drive, drive!" And without even looking, my buddy tears out of there. When I catch my breath, I explain what I saw. He's still driving 50, 60 miles per hour on a dirt back road toward town, which at that speed, we could reach town in about 30 minutes. Of course, my buddy never saw anybody, and he and I both think I'm losing my mind. Remember, there was nothing out there besides the coals. No car, no motorcycle, nothing. No way for anyone to be out there other than by foot. I should also mention that heading back into town, there were any number of dirt roads back in, and I'm talking hundreds. Trails, roads, hills, hell. We were in a 4x4, we could have made our own road if we wanted to. We ended up coming down a rarely used dirt road, and on the last curve before pavement, just outside town, the same man steps out from behind a tree, looks at us, and shakes his finger and head at us as if he was scolding a child. We both saw him this time, and when we looked back, he was gone. This is the only story in my life I have no explanation for. First, there is no possible way this person could have known which way we'd go back into town, especially with enough time to hide and then wait for us to come. Second, and I know I already said it, but there was no vehicle out in the flats. There just wasn't. To this day, I get the creeps just thinking about it. Case notes for the bonus file. The Unsettling Californian Giant. I've been rewatching Game of Thrones the past 2 weeks, and this makes me think of what if the mountain came out as a manifested spirit? It would be unstoppable. I'd take him even over dragons. Now, the size you described him as is certainly huge, but there are a lot of human beings of that size. The supernatural element is in his teleportation ability, seemingly. Unless he somehow had a dirt bike hidden in the sand, and this was a kind of twisted, elaborate prank. Even that doesn't seem right though, as you'd have heard the bike rev up and the motor if he actually managed to beat you to it, and then as you mentioned, how would he even know what path you took if there's hundreds going into town? Has to be a spirit, doesn't it? A really odd giant spirit. There's one other thing. In these cases of duplication events or possible duplication, another possibility is a real prank where I've seen a few reels on Instagram and so on of people, you have twins or triplets that pretend to walk past someone multiple times. And it's a cool prank because it's physical matter. They're actually just twins or triplets. One where they were going through a drive-thru and asking for the same thing, dressed in the same thing. Of course, it's one car after the other. So to the employee's perspective, there's no sense of this, and triplets and all that are rare enough, especially if they're dressed the same way. Could this be some weird prank? Maybe it's on YouTube somewhere of someone that just hides out in the desert and lures people in with the coal fire because it's flat, right? So you can see everything for miles and miles. I could see that as a possibility. But maybe it's more likely that it's just a weird spirit. I don't know. And now time for the quote of the day. Life is full of misery, loneliness, and suffering, and it's all over much too soon. Woody Allen. Kind of like the appeal I have with coffee, which I just take it black. But it's bitter, it's kind of gross, but it's delicious and awesome. It's weird, isn't it? Or spicy food, there's tons of pain, but I love it. Sometimes I feel like Hellraiser or Pinhead, will show you so many delights, pain and pleasure. You don't want too much pain, but there's some aspect of life where resistance and maybe suffering is going too far, loneliness and all that, but without the negative, it's hard to appreciate the positive. There's a lot of, yin and yang, Chinese philosophy in that sense, and it's true. Everything is relative to something else. So if life is only good, well, you'll just be at a neutral baseline. You'll never have those highs. Yeah, you need the lows to have them, but that's okay. I think life is pretty amazing as it is. Still, strive to make it better, but enjoy what you have. And yes, it's over way too soon. Let's try to fix that. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.